Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is training, and we're going to discuss the concept of urgent versus important. So this is actually kind of a lesson from business, and basically the concept is: are you working on what's urgent, or are you working on what's important? So, urgent, how I kind of define this stuff, is it seems important right now, but it only settles a right now issue. Whereas if something is important, it may be urgent or it may not be urgent, but it addresses what's best long term. Okay? So, a really goofy analogy, just to get the point across real fast, is so in my gym, we have like restrooms. So let's say, for example, every time someone flushed, the men's toilet overflowed. Okay. Well, I could deal with that every time it's flushed. So every time it's flushed, all of a sudden, like maybe the water runs and runs, and there's something wrong with the piping. So I could clean up the excess water, clean the floor, put it all back the way it belongs. Then the very next time somebody flushes it, the problem happens again. Or I could call in a plumber, get the plumbing fixed, and then the problem will go away. So very stupid analogy, but something fast so we can keep moving here. But that's the idea. Is another thing that I've had to work with in my business, and not everybody's going to agree, by the way, on what is urgent versus important, because it depends on the role in which you are playing in the moment. So, for example, a gym member might find something different, urgent versus important, than what the gym owner finds urgent versus important. Okay, so just because you see it one way doesn't mean everybody will agree. Be prepared for that. So, but like I often get when I'm in my office is when I do like podcasts like this, or I'm actually doing like programming for my in-person clients in the gym. I'm doing programming for my online clients, whether it's nutrition or training programming. I might be, creating social media content, how I might be eating, which is something I need to do every now and then throughout the day. So there's something that needs to be done. So if I leave my door open to my office, when I first ever opened the gym 8 years ago or so, I thought it was helpful to leave the door open and build camaraderie and connection with the gym members. And to a degree, that is absolutely important. And now comes me being a smartass and saying that, oh, for the love of God, I cannot leave my door open. So it was good in many ways, but it was a train wreck in many ways. Sometimes people just wanted to bitch about the same shit every day but not change anything. So they wasted my time every single day with the same damn things, but they would never do anything about it. So they would ask, they actually wouldn't even ask for advice. They'd just tell me what they were doing, and I was supposed to agree with them that that was the right thing. Because when I would give them advice, things that would actually address the issue, they would never do the damn stuff. So that was one problem. Another problem would be people would knock on the door, or they'd come over and they'd try to borrow stuff. So they'd want to borrow my tripod so they could film something they're doing. They'd want to borrow a screwdriver so they could change like their lever belt that they have for powerlifting or strength training. Maybe they want to borrow an extension cord because they want to like charge their phone. So people just always need something. And it's not necessarily a bad thing that people need things and blah, 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 all the politically correct stuff I'm supposed to say. But when you're dealing with 40, 50, 60 people a day, holy shit. If everybody needs 5 minutes of your time, there's 3 freaking hours that just disappears from my day. And yet I was the one supposed to make the money and pay all these bills. So, enough of me ranting. What seemed urgent for people was to borrow things like the tripod, a screwdriver, extension cord. But what was important for business was for me to keep the door closed and write my programming for my clients. So do the things that made me the money. There's a balance in business. You have to work on your business and you have to work in your business. So there's a book called E-Myth Revisited that I was recommended by a really good friend, Paul, and I love that book because I started out as kind of like the technician of the business where I loved personal training, so I was going to open a personal training business. Well, I'm a dumbass because When you own the business, you get to do less and less of what the actual thing is, because then you turn into the complaint department, the financial department, the janitor department, the all the other shit that you have to deal with department. So you don't get to do as much of the thing that you actually love when you own a business for it. So I was a dum-dum and opened up a business on the thing I loved, and have to deal with that consequence. But it became something where I had to balance working in the business, which was maintaining membership communication. But I also had to work on the business, the thing that paid the bills and grew the business, which was client programming and advertising and social media marketing and blah 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 blah. So it became very important for me to differentiate and to protect my time between what was urgent versus important. And in business, that is something I'm still redefining and relearning to some degree every single day. That is an ongoing process. You're never gonna, like, you will one day create a plan or a schedule that you think is just freaking perfect. And man, if I can hold this schedule, I'm gonna be a millionaire. The business is gonna take off, and everybody's gonna be happy. And then life laughs at you, and and it doesn't quite turn out that way. But it's an ongoing, continuing process trying to figure out in business what is urgent versus what important. Okay, it's the same thing in training. So after a 6.5 minute rant, we'll actually get back to the actual topic of the day. So in your training, you have to decide: am I working on what's urgent, or am I working on what's important? And I'm going to give you some context. We're just going to look at two types of training right now, just because of time's sake. And if you're outside the realm of muscle building, and if you're outside the realm of getting stronger, the concepts will still apply to you, okay? So stick with me here. But let's go through this and kind of think of it, how it applies in the gym. So we're to our training. If I have trouble getting muscles to grow, so if I want to get a bigger chest, my chest just doesn't seem to be getting bigger. If I want to get a bigger back, bigger calves, bigger arms, bigger booty, okay, bigger whatever, and it just doesn't seem to be growing. What most often people think of, their immediate response, kind of the urgent type response, is let me add more. So if I want my chest to grow, I'm going to do more chest. I'm either going to add more to my actual, like my individual workouts, or I'm going to train more frequently. So maybe I can train chest 3 times a week rather than only 2 times a week. If I want my booty to grow, maybe I can do booty every day. So there's going to be the initial response of more, more, more. That is kind of like responding in the urgency type mindset. Is, oh my gosh, what I'm doing isn't working, let me do more of that. Can you pick up the flaw in that type of logic? If what I'm doing isn't working, why would I do more of what isn't working? So is it really that we're not doing enough, or is it possibly that what we're doing isn't the best? It's more likely, if I don't have muscles growing, that what I'm doing isn't as effective as it could be or should be. It's probably not that I need to do more of that. Okay? So if what I'm doing isn't working, do more of what isn't working isn't going to work. Okay? So what we need to look at is we need to start analyzing of what I'm already doing. Am I doing what's best? Am I doing it at its best? I would want to perfect what I'm doing before I would add more of what I'm doing. Okay? So let's think about with muscle growth, one of the biggest flaws people make, oh my gosh, is this ridiculous, is when they're in the gym, they're trying to get a muscle to grow, they're just shoving weight around and throwing things around like a dumbass, basically. Now, you don't know you're a dumbass, so I feel kind of bad calling you a dumbass. However, you're a dumbass. So, now, I was a dumbass for probably the first 8 years of my training. where it was like, oh, okay, if I want to build a bigger back. So this is actually true, by the way, what I'm about to tell you, and it's embarrassingly stupid. But I have been a dumbass many times in my life, and I'm still a dumbass today in various ways. But I remember when I was 185 pounds, I was doing barbell bent over rows at 315 to 365 pounds because that's what the bodybuilders in the magazines used. So if a big dude who's 315 pounds of solid muscle does 315-pound barbell rows, that what must be what I need to do too. Even though I weigh half as much and have maybe a fourth of much of muscle. So somehow, for the love of God, I would never have wanted to see what I looked like doing these things. But I managed to do barbell bent over rows with 350 pounds on the bar. Okay, 315 pounds on the bar when I was only 185 pounds. I now weigh 280 pounds, okay? So almost 100 pounds more, and I don't even do 315-pound barbell bent over rows because they look like absolute shit, and there's no way to get a really good muscular contraction, okay? So I absolutely was a dumbass who just threw weight around and thought throwing heavy things around would make me grow. No, because Lord knows whatever muscles you're actually using probably aren't the ones you want to actually grow. So if I'm trying to do heavy, like let's say I'm going to grow my chest and I'm doing dumbbell chest presses. We've all seen the person, or we are the person, we don't know it, who uses way too heavy of dumbbells. They come down to where the dumbbells, like their hands aren't even, like the head of the dumbbell, okay, which is larger than your hand, won't even come down and touch their chest. Which still means that their hands aren't even as like down as far, getting a full stretch in the chest muscles. So they're doing these like top half of a range of motion, like tricep lockouts under really stupidly heavy weight. They throw the dumbbells to the floor, they bounce around and clang around, make really big loud noises. They stand up and they like feel pumped and proud and accomplished, but yet their chest isn't growing. Well, no shit, because you're just using your front delt and your tricep for the whole damn thing. You're not even using your chest. And if your chest is involved, it's just so you don't smash your face in with the dumbbell. So your body's firing everything. You're probably getting as much glute work as you are chest work because your body's flexing everything to protect your dumb self. So that's something you see all the time, is when somebody wants to grow, they just move really heavy shit around and they don't pay attention to flexing and squeezing the targeting muscle. Okay? So I'm going to give you guys some podcasts throughout this podcast so you can check them out and learn more about. If I say something that you're like, oh crap, I'm probably making that mistake, go listen to the podcast I'm about to reference, okay? And I'll have these listed on kind of our podcast descriptions so you can see which podcast we're referencing. But it's important for muscle growth that we understand the idea of using our muscles versus just moving weight. So in podcast number 220, titled Muscle Intention versus Movement Intention, we discussed the difference of training for building muscle versus building strength. If you want to get stronger, you want to focus on the movement of how all of the muscles, leverages, and pathways of a certain exercise are combining and coming into play. If you want a muscle to grow, then you don't focus on the movement itself, you focus on what the muscle is doing. So it's what the intention of the muscle is versus the intention of the movement, okay? So if I want my chest to grow, I have to do a movement that creates a good stretch in my chest. I can get a good, strong, momentumless, okay, no momentum, a good, strong contraction through the chest to a full squeeze, and then go back slowly into the stretch. So I want to keep the focus on the muscle if my goal is to build the muscle. If my goal is to get stronger at a movement, then my focus is on the movement. So podcast 220 will help you understand that. Now, conversely, on the other side, is we have people who want to build muscle, but they're using too light of weight, and they're not even doing the right kind of rep ranges and the right time and retentions. So, unfortunately, this does come up more as male versus females. But there are absolutely, exceptions to the rules. But in general, men are idiots for many reasons other than in the gym. And they'll use too heavy of weights all the time. Then you'll have females who use too light of weights all the time, but they want their muscles to grow and have good shape. So podcast number 214 discusses understanding rep ranges and expected results. So how much time under tension do I need to have my muscle, and to what degree of difficulty for it to grow? So podcast 214 discusses that. Now, how you train is important, but it's not even the whole picture. What about what you're eating? If you are not eating adequately to support growth, no matter what your training is structured as, you will not get growth. We can only build bigger muscle by having a surplus of calories, and specifically protein. Protein builds muscle, not carbs, not fats. Now, if you have enough carbs and fats in your diet, they'll help you spare your protein. There is a concept called protein sparing, but you need to have enough carbs and fats to allow the body to utilize utilize the protein to build the muscle. If you don't have enough carbs and fats in your diet, your body will have to break the protein down for energy, and you don't get the muscle growth. So you can't just eat all protein diet and then expect to be massively huge and super lean. I promise you, because I tried it for years, because I was a stubborn jackass and I didn't understand it when I was younger. So when I was younger, I thought carbs and fats made me fat. I thought protein built muscle, so fine, I'll just eat protein. Turns out that doesn't work well, by the way, and you have absolutely no energy and you feel like shit when you punch everybody in the face. So you do need carbs and fats, but it's important to get enough protein in if you actually want muscle growth, because protein is what actually builds muscle. So nutrition is extremely important. You could be doing the perfect training, and maybe you can even add more to your training, which is what you thought was probably the best thing to do. But if your food doesn't support your current training for growth, it sure as hell won't support more training, okay? So podcast 241 discusses nutrition concepts for aesthetic athletes. And last thing for kind of building muscle is maybe you're doing too much, too many countering activities. So how many people do we know, they try to eat super restrictive and super clean, which means they're not going to have enough calories for growth. They train like a maniac, killing their body with weights and stuff, and that's good for eliciting muscle damage, which then would have the body response of muscle growth, but they don't have enough calories in the first place. And then they're doing a shitload of cardio on top of it because they want to have the cardio to help them stay lean. So they think, I'm going to eat cleanly to control body fat. I'm going to lift weights to build muscle, and I'm going to do cardio to keep body fat off. No, lifting weights doesn't build muscle. Lifting weights gives your body the stimulus to then use food and sleep to build muscle. But lifting weights doesn't build muscle. Food and sleep builds muscle. Assuming you've lifted weights. So you can't just eat and sleep all day and get bigger muscles. But too often people do a bunch of cardio, okay, around their muscle building activities, and that's actually impairing their process of building muscle, because the cardio is competing for calories and it's competing for recovery. So therefore, you're not going to get the best amount of calories to your muscle growth, and you're not going to get the best quality of recovery towards muscle growth, because you have a competing stimulus. So you do not want to do a bunch of cardio when you're trying to build muscle. They're countering activities, especially steady state cardio, where you just walk on a treadmill or walk on a step mill for an hour. That's a ridiculous waste of time, and it will absolutely impair your ability to build muscle. Now, we've done a couple podcasts about cardio. The one that I would suggest you check out is number 30, titled Muscle Cardio, How to Burn Fat Without Losing Muscle. So that is the type of cardio you would want to do. It's short burst intervals, using weight training actually as your stimulus for caloric burn and oxygen burn, rather than just walking or doing a slow, steady pace of something. So podcast number 30, titled Muscle Cardio, that's the one you want to check out. So if I have muscles that are not growing, I do not want to have the urgency type response and say, what I'm doing isn't working, let me do more of it. That sounds stupid to say, but that is actually what people do. So, before you try to add more, make sure of what you're doing is actually the best. Cool. Now, the other example we have, I'll have to go a little faster because we're going to run out of time, is not getting stronger. So if I want to get stronger in an exercise or just in general or whatever, and I notice I'm not getting stronger, again, the urgency type response is add more to what I'm doing now. Whereas the correct response is analyze if what I'm already doing is being done best. So that's the idea. We need to focus on the quality of what we do, not the quantity. For strength training, technique 99.999999% of the time is what's impairing a person from getting stronger. Their technique is not good. Their technique may be better than when they started, so congratulations if you've improved your technique, but I promise you can still get better. I have been lifting weights for 20 years, and I'm still learning new things about technique all the time. So, there are actually 3 ways to progress in strength. So podcast number 102 discusses the 3 ways to progress in strength. It's physical, technical, and mental. So too often when people are not strong and they want to get stronger and they seem to be struggling, they just focus on the physical aspect. Let me get physically stronger. Let me do more so I can get stronger. Well, you got to focus on technique. Not only for the big lifts, not only for squat, bench, and deadlift, or if you're doing strongman, not only for just the lifts themselves of like Atlas stones, stone presses, blah, 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 blah. You need to not just do more of that. You need to focus on doing it better, which is technique. So in that podcast, we discuss that most people consider physical to be the first place to look, when they actually should be looking at technical. So you need to get technically more proficient with your movements to get the best physical development from them. So doing more of a shitty movement doesn't make it better. It just makes it more shit. Okay? So we all can use less shit in our life. So that's the idea, is let me learn if what I'm doing now is best before I try to do more of it. Just kind of makes sense. So think about your programming. Are you, if you're trying to get stronger and you don't seem to be able to get any stronger, are you building a nice strong base covering all the aspects you need to be stronger, or are you just trying to stack things on top of a thin little base? So too often when I see people wanting to get stronger with lifts, they just try to do more heavy sets of that lift. They don't work on technique, and they don't pay attention to their accessory exercises. So I currently have somebody I'm working with, they want to get better at deadlift. And their current program doesn't even have a deadlift in it. So their question was, how the hell am I going to get better at deadlift if I don't deadlift? And what we're focusing on is they weren't able to deadlift with correct technique because they didn't actually have the physical development to use their muscles correctly. So they didn't have a butt, they didn't really have hamstrings, they could definitely use stronger quads, they just had one hell of a strong low back. So when we were trying to get their starting position of the deadlift, to use more legs, to help drive the bar, conventional deadlift by the way, to help drive the bar off the floor, they would try to get into the right position, but the second they would go to move, their lower back would take over, they'd drop out of the position. It looked good when they were doing lightweight, but all of a sudden when they crossed over into kind of upper heavyweights, everything went to shit. And the reason why was because their legs are weak. More deadlifting in a bad position won't make their legs stronger. More deadlifting in the right position but with like 50% weight load, because that's how light it has to be for them to deadlift correctly, that won't make them stronger either because the weight's too damn light. So what we did was we focused on accessories. So things like leg press, half squat, lunges, RDLs, stiff leg deadlifts, things that would build their weakest muscles So then we can put them all together again later on, and they can actually get into the right position under heavy enough weight to actually make progress when doing the main lift itself. So that's something you want to think of. Do I have a good, strong base so I can actually lift correctly? In podcast 232, we cover the big picture checklist for general programming, the thing that all programs should have. And then in podcast 98, we discuss programming for weaknesses. So 232 tells you how to put the big picture together. Number 98 tells you how to focus on just your weaknesses. So that helps. Again, with strength, if I'm not getting stronger, is my nutrition supporting my goal? In podcast 237, we talk about concepts of nutrition for strength athletes. So you want to check that out. And then what about recovery? Okay, are you training too often for your goal and you're not allowing enough recovery? Or are you training too much for your goal and you're not allowing enough recovery? I see this all the time. It's awesome people are dedicated, but they're being kind of ego-driven and they're not slowing down and thinking what's best. They're just like more. So podcast 322 discusses training frequency and recovery differences per goal. So if I want more strength versus more muscle, how often can I train? They're different, by the way. So you can only train so often when training for strength. And you can train more frequently, but how much more frequently if you're trying to build muscle? So podcast 322 discusses that. And podcast 148 discusses the idea of stimulus versus recovery, which is quality over quantity. Am I doing enough to elicit my goal? Or am I doing so much that I'm not reaching my goal because I can't recover from all the damn shit I'm doing? I'm doing too much, actually. So podcast 148 discusses that. So, when you want to look at getting stronger, but you don't seem to be getting results, doing more of what's not working, okay, won't give you better results. You have to find out of the work you're doing now, how can you do it better? So you need to make sure that your technique is on point. Learn technique, okay? Get somebody who knows more than you to help you out. Now, programming. Try to make sure that your programming is sufficient for all areas of training. So you're building a nice, strong base, not building a skinny little tower that can fall over at any time. Okay? AKA injury. Make sure your nutrition is on point and make sure your training frequency and amount is not too much, that you're impairing your recovery, and it's actually you're not recovering, which is the reason why you're not progressing. Cool. So, when you think of your training, are you looking for a quick fix or are you looking for increased discipline and knowledge? In every aspect of life, increased discipline and knowledge is the best answer. Not, how can I get there fastest? And that's almost never the right answer. And that has to do with everything, in the gym and outside. Look for more discipline and more knowledge in life, and you'll get better results. So, you can think to yourself, is almost always what you're already doing can be done better. So that's the first place to look. I've been lifting for 20 years. And I still only do about 1 to 1.5 hour workouts on about 4 to 6 days a week. That's how often I trained when I first started. I actually trained every day, by the way. But for most often of my life, I've trained 4 to 6 days a week. And roughly they're about an hour-long workouts. That has not changed in 20 years. But yet I've doubled my squat, bench, and deadlift total in 20 years. And I've added 100 pounds of muscle mass to my body in 20 years. How can I double my strength and add 100 pounds of muscle when I didn't double my training volume? It's because I learned to do what I was already doing better. That's the answer. Don't look to do more. Look to do what you're doing better. That's always the answer. So look at anyone in your sport, okay, or anyone that is achieving the goal that you would like to achieve. There is an upper limit to how much they can train per day. So even if you think of CrossFit athletes, they do 2, maybe even 3 sessions a day. The top athletes all do that, right? The top, say, 1,000 athletes all train the exact same amount. But yet some get better results than others. Some of that is genetics, and that just sucks because some people have good genetics, some people don't. Some of that is the quality of their training. If what they're doing technically better. Some of it's maybe they have more efficiency in their movements. Maybe they have better focus on their muscle movements. Maybe they have better nutrition, better sleep, better recovery. It's not more. What's separating the top 1,000 athletes isn't that the top 10 are doing more than the other 990. It's what they're doing better. That's the first place to look. Okay? So education, learning, and more discipline. That's what you want to focus after. Okay? And doing the things you suck at. So education, learn, discipline yourself, and do more of the things that you're weakest at. Okay? Drop your ego to pick up the gains. That's going to be the goal. So don't focus on what's urgent. Focus on what's important. Cool. Hopefully this helped. If you like this podcast, please share it with family and friends. The more people we help, the happier the world will be. Also, if you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram